The statement by world-renowned scientist Egon Chalakian has shocked society, causing great concern, as he issued an appeal to the global scientific community regarding a global climate threat. He stated that our planet is on the brink of self-destruction. The year 2023 became a witness to a series of major disasters for the world. The planet was hit by fires, earthquakes, and floods, which caused widespread destruction and took the lives of many people. In this video, we will look at the 15 most terrifying and mysterious natural disasters that occurred in the past year. But before we begin, let me remind you that you can subscribe to our channel right now and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our new releases. I wish everyone a pleasant viewing. Let's go. In the early morning of February 6, 2023, a devastating earthquake with a magnitude of 7.8 struck the border of Turkey and Syria. Its epicenter was located in the Gaziantep area. 9 hours later, another equally strong earthquake with a magnitude of 7.5 occurred, with its epicenter in Kahramanmaraş. The underground shocks, followed by thousands of aftershocks, were felt over a wide area and in neighboring countries. These earthquakes were among the strongest in Turkey in the last 100 years. Thousands of buildings collapsed, leaving people unprotected in harsh winter conditions. Not only residential buildings were destroyed, but the population was also left without schools, hospitals, and buildings of historical and cultural value. Rescue operations continued for more than a week, and it was possible to pull living children and adults from the rubble who were fortunate enough to find shelter. The record time spent under the rubble reached 198 hours. As a result of the natural disaster, more than 15.5 million people in Turkey and Syria were affected. 55,000 people died. About 160,000 buildings collapsed or were severely damaged. Millions of people were forced to leave their homes. Turkey suffered a total damage of $110 billion. Morocco witnessed the strongest earthquake in the last 120 years, with the epicenter of the shocks located 71 kilometers from Marrakesh in the El Haouz province. This densely populated area suffered the most from the strongest shocks. The layer of earth shook on the night of September 8 to 9, covering the entire country, with an earthquake magnitude of 6.8. The shocks lasted only a few seconds, but at least 4 more aftershocks followed. People panicked and ran out of their homes, and rescuers evacuated the injured and the bodies of the deceased from all over the country throughout the night. Many settlements in the high Atlas Mountains were completely destroyed. The historic city and economic center of the country, Marrakesh, also suffered significant damage, affecting over 300,000 people. Local television showed footage of a fallen minaret of a mosque. Earthquakes are quite rare in Morocco. Experts believe that the African plate moved north and collided with the Eurasian plate, causing this devastating natural disaster. As a result of the earthquake, more than 2,900 people died, and over 5,500 were injured. The damage is estimated at $12 billion. On December 3, 2023, the volcano Mount Merapi erupted on the Indonesian island of Sumatra. This volcano is considered one of the most active in Indonesia. On this day, Merapi emitted a column of ash reaching a height of 3,000 meters into the atmosphere. The eruption lasted almost 5 minutes, and the ash cloud spread over several kilometers, covering nearby villages. Authorities responded to the threat by providing residents with masks and recommending the use of glasses to protect against volcanic ash. Since 2011, Merapi has been on the 3rd level of danger out of 4 possible. This level warns of exceeding normal volcanic activity and prohibits climbers and local residents from approaching the summit closer than 3 kilometers. Despite this, 75 climbers began their ascent of this nearly 900-meter mountain. After the eruption, 11 tourists were found dead, and 12 more were missing. 8 survivors were hospitalized with burns. Storm Daniel hit northeastern Libya on Sunday, September 10th, bringing with it strong winds and sudden torrential rains that led to widespread flooding, destruction, and loss of life. In less than 24 hours, 80% of Libya's annual precipitation fell on its coasts. Rapidly rising waters breached 2 dams in the east of the country, A huge wave covered the city of Derna, with a population of 100,000 people, sweeping residential areas into the Mediterranean Sea. The city's infrastructure was seriously damaged. All communications were disrupted and there was no mobile phone or internet service. The streets were covered with mud, uprooted trees, and fragments of broken cars. As a result of the flooding, more than 11,000 people died in Libya, and about 20,000 were missing. This was reported by the Libyan Red Crescent. They were the first to arrive at the disaster site, evacuating people, providing first aid, and conducting search and rescue operations. Located in a tropical climate zone, the Democratic Republic of Congo often faces natural disasters during the rainy season. In 2023, Congo experienced its worst flooding in the last 60 years. Intense torrential rains caused rivers to overflow, resulting in streams of water and mud flooding into villages, washing away homes, and devastating farmlands. The flooding affected the Kalehe territory in South Kivu and triggered numerous landslides. Residents of the most affected villages, Bushushu and Nyamakubi, had to walk to evacuate to neighboring villages. This flooding was part of a regional disaster in Congo. As a result of the disaster, more than 400 people died. Thousands were missing, numerous homes were flooded, there were significant property losses, and infrastructure was destroyed. Due to severe drought in the region, a wildfire broke out near the town of Lahaina on the evening of August 8th. The flames were fueled by hurricane winds caused by Storm Dora passing through the Pacific Ocean. The firestorm spun out of control, cutting through dry grass. The fire descended on the coastal town of Lahaina, home to 13,000 people. Power lines were cut off everywhere, and Lahaina was left without cell phone service, preventing people from communicating and receiving emergency alerts. Two main roads that could have been used to leave the city were closed due to the fire, damaged power lines, and abandoned cars. As a result, people were trapped in a hellish traffic jam, where many were burned in their cars. The wind carried embers, creating what seemed like a fire rain, and the smoke was so thick and dark that it was impossible to tell which direction to run. People who managed to escape the fire jumped into the water. This fire disaster destroyed most of the historic town of Lahaina, leaving only a few buildings standing. The fire on Maui Island, which killed at least 115 people, is considered the deadliest wildfire in the U.S. in the last century. The damage was estimated at approximately $5.5 billion. As a result of heavy rains in Italy, the most powerful flooding in the last 100 years occurred, flooding 41 cities. The flooding in Emilia-Romagna and other northern regions of Italy came right after a prolonged drought. A 7-month norm of precipitation fell within 2 weeks, causing rivers to overflow throughout the region. The heavy rains triggered severe landslides. Many cities were completely flooded. For local residents, the situation became critical. Elderly people and people with disabilities were trapped in their homes, roads were blocked, and it was simply impossible to leave the city. Rescuers moved through the flooded streets in boats. More than 2,000 rescue operations were conducted to combat the aftermath of the disaster. The disaster claimed the lives of 13 people, and more than 20,000 residents of Italy were left homeless. One of the deadliest earthquakes in the last 20 years occurred in Afghanistan. The first earthquake, with a magnitude of 6.3, struck on October 7, 2023, with the epicenter located approximately 40 kilometers northwest of the city of Herat, at a depth of 10 kilometers. It was followed by 3 very strong aftershocks with magnitudes of 6.3, 5.9, and 5.5. The numerous earthquakes destroyed entire villages in the country. Homes were turned into ruins, and many people were buried under the debris. Destroyed buildings blocked roads, creating difficulties for rescue operations. Afghanistan faced a worsening humanitarian crisis. The country, under the control of the Islamic movement Taliban, faced serious problems, including reduced aid from many international organizations. Afghanistan is particularly vulnerable to earthquakes as the entire country is located in the territory of 2 major active faults, where earthquakes occur every year. This series of devastating earthquakes claimed the lives of more than 2,000 people and left many families homeless. In the summer of 2023, the European Union witnessed abnormal heat waves. For several weeks, the temperature never dropped below 40 degrees Celsius. This phenomenon was facilitated by a cyclone that came to southern Europe from the Sahara Desert. The heat was accompanied by strong winds, which triggered major fires across Greece. The fires that engulfed Greece in July 2023 were the most severe in the last 13 years, burning more than 77,000 hectares of land. The height of the flames in various areas exceeded 5 meters. To save people, a preemptive evacuation from 13 settlements threatened by the fire was carried out. This large-scale operation to transport residents and tourists to safe places became the largest in the country's history. Firefighting forces were stretched to their limits, and Greece sought help from other European countries, receiving hundreds of firefighters as well as a fleet of planes and helicopters from across the continent. Although summer forest fires in Greece are a common occurrence, the government states that conditions, which scientists link to climate change, have made them more intense this year. The combination of high temperatures, drought, and winds, unfortunately, creates optimal conditions for the occurrence of forest fires with serious consequences. The strongest hurricane, Otis, which was classified as the highest fifth category of danger, hit the Mexican city of Acapulco. It destroyed everything in its path, with wind gusts reaching 266 kilometers per h. The hurricane caused widespread destruction. Rains flooded the city, winds blew off roofs from houses, carried away cars, and destroyed all infrastructure. The highway connecting Acapulco with other settlements was blocked due to landslides. The severe conditions in Acapulco led to acts of looting, and residents faced a shortage of food and drinking water. More than 17,000 military personnel were sent to the city to restore order and organize humanitarian aid. The damage from the hurricane is estimated at $15 billion. The number of deaths and missing people as a result of the disaster reached 100. Iceland, home to 32 active volcanoes, is located at the boundary of the tectonic plate, which constantly splits, pushing North America and Eurasia away from each other. Nevertheless, thanks to timely forecasts and the swift action of authorities, Iceland is the most prepared for such natural events. On the eve of the volcanic activity in Reykjanes, residents of the nearby town of Grindavik, about 4,000 people, were evacuated, and the Blue Lagoon Resort was closed. The eruption of the Reykjanes volcano began on December 18th, with magma fountains rising high into the air, emissions reaching up to 30 meters, and lava flows spreading for several kilometers. According to the Icelandic Meteorological Service, up to 200,000 liters of magma were gushing out every second, and a crack about 3.5 kilometers long formed on the volcano. This is much more than during previous eruptions on the peninsula. A day before the eruption, more than 1,000 underground tremors were recorded in the area, resulting in damaged houses. The volcano eruption did not lead to significant destruction or human casualties, but the emissions of toxic gases significantly polluted the atmosphere. An earthquake with a magnitude of 6.3 occurred in China. Powerful underground shocks were recorded approximately 1,300 kilometers southwest of Beijing, affecting two densely populated provinces, Gansu and Qinghai. In the area of the earthquake epicenter, homes and infrastructure were damaged, with approximately 15,000 buildings destroyed. Power and water supply lines were disrupted, and the majority of roads were damaged. The onset of freezing temperatures worsened the situation for the victims, making rescue operations challenging at sub-zero temperatures. To accommodate the evacuated local residents, whose numbers exceeded 87,000, authorities organized the construction of temporary shelters. A total of 500 small box houses were built. In Qinghai province, the earthquake caused a landslide with a 3-meter layer of mud and rocks presumably sweeping away 12 people, who continue to be listed as missing. According to the latest information, the death toll is at least 135 people, with more than 900 injured. For China, heavy summer rainfall is quite common, but this year, 3 typhoons came from the Pacific Ocean in just 1 month, further intensifying the seasonal monsoon rains. In July and early August 2023, northern China experienced the highest amount of rainfall in the last 140 years. In just 83 hours, the rainfall exceeded 60% of the annual precipitation norm, leading to severe flooding. At least 1.5 million people were affected by the floods. The rural areas of Beijing were particularly hard hit. The majority of agricultural land was flooded. These regions are major grain producers. The loss of crops had a significant impact on the food supply across the country. In some provinces, more than 40% of the rice crop was destroyed. Local residents blame the authorities for the critical situation in the flood-affected areas. The reason is the artificial diversion of floodwaters into densely populated areas to protect the capital, Beijing, and the new city of Xiong'an under construction. It has been confirmed that some regulating dams were opened, exacerbating the destruction in rural areas. Thus, the flooded cities served as a defensive moat for the capital. The economic damage in the affected regions is estimated at more than $13.2 billion. About 100 people died as a result of the flooding. Tropical storm Freddie swept across the southern part of the African continent on March 12, 2023. Mozambique and Malawi bore the brunt, with heavy torrential rains causing devastating floods and landslides. The aftermath was widespread. Roads and bridges were washed away, agricultural lands were destroyed, and many homes were completely washed away by the water. A state of emergency was declared in the south of the country. The most affected were densely populated poor communities living in brick and mud houses. Aid agencies warn that the destruction will exacerbate the cholera outbreak in Malawi. The powerful cyclone Freddie delivered a devastating blow to Malawi, with the country's authorities reporting 438 dead and 134 injured. The year 2023 set a record for Canada in terms of the number and scale of forest fires, with 18.5 million hectares of land burned, becoming a national disaster for the country. About 70% of the population of Canada's Northwest Territories left their homes. A large-scale evacuation was conducted in Yellowknife, with about 20,000 people leaving the city. The province of British Columbia was significantly affected, where a forest fire destroyed about 400 homes, 6 firefighters died, and more than 2.8 million hectares were burned. Fires have always been a characteristic feature of Canadian forests, but this year was staggering. Experts say the climate crisis has led to an increase in the frequency and intensity of forest fires. Over the past year, the world has experienced a record number of natural disasters, once again reminding us of the fragility of human life and the importance of protecting our planet. The question arises, what other surprises does nature have in store for us, and is the Earth really on the brink of destruction? We look forward to your answers in the comments. If you liked this video, please rate it and subscribe to our channel. Your activity is the best reward for us. Thank you for your attention. See you soon.